The scene opens with the gentle sound of waves breaking upon the shore of a beach. A woman, wearing a wide-brimmed beach hat, is seen fishing near some palm trees. She adjusts her hat, noting the lack of success. She hasn't had any bites. Setting down her fishing rod, she decides to take a break and eat. Rushing towards her beach blanket, she remarks that today's breakfast will be eel rice balls, describing them as so delicious they are almost fatal. On-screen statistics appear, labeling the dish as spicy, sweet, and salty, and providing 20 energy points and 5 stamina. As she begins to eat, a broad smile spreads across her face, and she exclaims how incredibly tasty the meal is. Silence follows as she enjoys her food under the palm tree. She then reflects that things have become quite boring since being deserted on this island. Before arriving here, she had spent 6 years in a hospital. A car accident had left her with the loss of function in both her legs, rendering her completely immobile. Each day felt devoid of meaning. Her only source of happiness came from her kind family, who remained by her side and provided unwavering devotion and care. Despite their support, feelings of loneliness and helplessness were unavoidable. This changed one day when she felt certain she had passed away. Upon opening her eyes, she found a game system screen displayed before her. It prompted her to name her island, warning that the choice would be permanent. She briefly wonders if her life is flashing before her eyes before recalling a healing game she used to play with her sisters that featured an island. Trying to remember the name they chose back then, the words Trapped Island appear on the screen. After clicking O, the screen confirms Trapped has been selected and informs the traveler that their second life is now beginning. The protagonist is stunned, questioning the meaning of a second life. She slowly opens her eyes, her head resting on a shaded beach. She grasps her head, disoriented, before noticing her legs and the sandals she is wearing. Tears stream down her cheeks as she stares at her limbs. The narrative states this occurred about a year and a half ago, or 5 years by this world's reckoning. She initially found it hard to believe but adapted to island life much faster than anticipated. The system window frequently presented quests, leaving her no time for loneliness. We see her engaged in woodworking projects, and she expresses how satisfying it was to experience a second life with a healthy body. On the 4th spring, the system announced that her tutorial phase was finally complete. The waves continue to splash on the beach. She observes that it has been a year with no new quests, lamenting how daily life has become so monotonous that she has lost her mind multiple times. She mentions that the encyclopedia is filled with question marks, indicating vast possibilities remain undiscovered, yet questions the purpose. She wonders if completing the encyclopedia might trigger the quest window again and notes that her sashimi skill is still only 1 star. Standing up, she decides to make it a priority to catch a large fish today to create 5-star sashimi. She motivates herself, reminding herself that this is paradise compared to the old days when she was unable to do anything. She resolves to simply enjoy doing what she can, day by day. Suddenly, something powerful tugs at her fishing rod. She notes that nothing has ever pulled back this strongly, signifying she must have hooked a large catch. Having caught nothing all day, she feels she absolutely cannot lose this one. With a loud cry, she pulls with all her might. We see her straining as something is sent flying through the air. She stares upwards in confusion for a moment. In the sea, there was a person floating. She wonders what is happening as she reaches out to poke the individual. Her hand touches white hair, and she questions if this is a real person. A system window then appears as she looks up at it. It informs her she has caught a mystery item which is currently being registered in the encyclopedia. It also announces a new main quest titled A Strange Castaway. Accepting and completing this quest will allow time to flow normally again. Declining will permit the mystery item to swim back into the ocean. The question posed is whether she will proceed with this main quest. The female lead is excited by the prospect of new game progress and enthusiastically declares that of course, she will accept. She then hears a growl coming from near her feet. Saying sorry, she assures the person she will help quickly. We see her walking through the forest carrying the man on her shoulder, with a wet shoe floating visible behind her. She comments on how thick his clothes are and how the wetness makes them extra heavy. The quest instructs her to take the castaway home and nurse them. She recalls her maximum stamina, gained from carrying logwood, mining ores, and hunting monsters. The door opens, and she steps inside a well-built wooden room. She drops the man onto the bed, mentioning she was fortunate to have expanded the house earlier and will need to set up a new bed soon. The quest menu displays details about this mystery item, caught on the 8th day of the 5th spring, measuring 193 centimeters tall and weighing 74 kilograms, with silver hair and described as extremely handsome. The female lead notes how the game is treating him like a hooked fish, even providing weight and height. She then internally acknowledges that he is indeed good-looking, especially since even the system says so. She wonders how she is supposed to care for him now that he is home. To her surprise, another menu screen appears, stating the next step of the main quest: remove all of the mystery items' clothing. This leaves her stunned, as it specifies removing everything, including even the underwear. Puzzled, she questions having to get rid of everything. She then yells at the screen, protesting that this is not right and that the quest initially said she only had to nurse him back to health. She questions why she is required to remove the clothing of a man she just met. She suggests she will make the room warm instead so his clothes dry faster, to which the system emphasizes the words "take off clothes" in red. She tells the system she will cover him in phoenix feathers for warmth to avoid removing anything, yet the system continues to urge her to complete the quest. Her face shows sweat and terror before she finally agrees, saying she will do it. Nervously, she insists this is just medical treatment and has no other intentions. She falls silent, then blushes, and wonders if she is going crazy because she is also drooling. She notes she has never seen a man's chest besides her brother's and finds it quite embarrassing. She recalls a time her brother had to take off his shirt after spilling cola, and how her sister once showed her a model's picture, jokingly saying their eyes would rot. The female lead notes that this man's chest resembles those models. She then observes how difficult this task is because his clothes are wet, wondering if she will have to rip them off. She starts to make her move, apologizing and promising to get him new clothes later. She thinks she should be done with the quest now, but the window seemingly indicates otherwise. Looking back, she notes it appears she has to take off his underwear too. She says she will have to find something to cover him first. Closing her eyes, she apologizes and begins. She tells him to excuse her for a moment before the male emits a sound. Startled, she screams, and then a realization dawns on her. She notes how her hand, just at that moment, encountered something. You know. Later, we see her standing next to some laundry machines, looking tired. She notes how exhausted she feels, mentioning that she didn't even break a sweat digging for 4 hours, but this task was different. She calls it ridiculous but is relieved the quest is complete. She decides to examine the clothes. Pulling out his shirt, she notes how thick it is for the situation and wonders if he is from a cold country. She considers that wearing it again might be hot for him in the spring and decides she should simply make a new shirt. As she walks down the stairs, she mentions that the remaining quest requires caring for the man until he wakes and then helping him recover. Looking around, she expresses relief that she has produced a lot of elixir. The one she possesses is made from fairy fireflies and their honey. She notes how beneficial it would be if this elixir is effective on the man. Bottles containing what appear to be apples sit on a table. She mentions that his fever has subsided thanks to the elixir and that he could wake up at any moment, so she must watch him all night. She reflects on how comforting it must be to have someone nearby when waking up after experiencing a difficult situation like his. She also notes that this is her first time caring for someone. She thinks about how wonderful it would be if he woke up quickly. Time passes, and it is now nighttime. The man begins to sweat and make noises. His golden eyes open, and he is breathing heavily as he stares upwards. He wonders where he is and recalls drinking tea at the palace earlier. He then wonders who the woman next to him is. He is stunned as the woman wakes up as well. He reaches for a knife near the apples. The female lead stretches, wondering when she fell asleep. He points the knife at her, asking her intentions. The female lead pauses, questioning the situation. The man then asks why she saved him. She notes that the knife won't even leave a scratch but comments on how sudden his reaction is as he continues to nervously point it at her. The quest screen then pops up, stating that the mystery person has just woken up and still desires to pass on. Her job is now to make him see how beautiful and precious life is, even if he feels he has no reason to carry on. The female lead is stunned, noting her new task is to give him a reason to live. She questions what in the world she is supposed to do, especially since she doesn't even know what happened to him. Initially, she had assumed he would thank her for saving his life and offer to repay the favor, perhaps even performing magic tricks to alleviate her boredom. She then begins to wonder how she will explain all of this to him. He stares silently. He tells her that if she is expecting something in return for her help, she won't get it, as he has nothing. A moment of silence follows as he realizes he is also completely naked under the blanket. He asks what she did to him. She yells back, saying she did nothing. He tells her she must have known it would have been better to just leave him alone. She tells him to wait a minute, grabs his shoulders, and starts shaking him. He is silent as she explains that she did not expect anything for saving him and that what happened was he got stuck to her fishing rope. He questions this. She mentions she can provide all the details later and tells him to just rest for now. She then leaves, saying she will bring back porridge for him. He remains silent, still holding the blanket. We are now in the kitchen, where she is wearing an apron. She notes that she probably looked like a fool yesterday, feeling cold sweat and a red face. She has been alone on this island for ages, and before that, the only people she talked to were her family. As she begins making the porridge, she recalls how much she hated being looked at with empathy and how she tried her best to avoid it. She lets out a smile now, noting that before trying to show him the reason to live, she should practice having conversations. The perfect porridge is now complete. She walks into the room, announcing she has the porridge, before noting he is still on high guard. She asks if he can eat alone. He remains silent. She mentions she can help him if he cannot, to which he says no. The female lead notes she has to feed him even if he doesn't want to, as she must help him recover first. She brings the spoon near his mouth and tells him to open up. A small struggle ensues before she tells him great job and to take another bite. As he eats, he wonders what this is. Later, the bowl is empty. He mentions that she said she caught him with a fishing rod. She confirms this is correct. She decides to make him lower his guard by explaining everything. She mentions not having caught a fish yesterday until she suddenly felt something big, and it was then that she caught him instead of a fish. He is speechless and questions this, causing her to note he seems even more suspicious now. She wonders if he thinks she is strange due to her lack of hesitation in talking and how she wants to become close after finally meeting someone after such a long time. She briefly wonders if she should knock him out and tell him it was a dream to start over. Before she can act on this thought, he says he may have misunderstood. He mentions being rude to the person who saved his life and asks for her name. She wonders why he changed so suddenly before saying her name is Yuri. She notes he must have believed the explanation, to which the man says he wants to know where he is and mentions he does not remember falling into the sea. She then nervously tells him that this is the trapped island. He is silent as she tries to reassure him it is not a strange place and that is just its name. He asks where exactly they are, to which she says she doesn't know much about the island and didn't come here by choice. He asks if something forced her here, to which she says no, but that someone did bring her here, and she has been living alone. He then asks if he can summarize. He mentions that Yuri is living on a trapped island she doesn't know well and happened to catch him while fishing. She tells him that is correct. He then asks if she doesn't know who he is. She says that is correct and it is their first time meeting. She then recalls how he told her to leave him alone to rot and wonders if he is a wanted man. She then asks him for his name. He remains silent. He says he does not remember and doesn't even know his job or how he ended up on a fishing rope. Yuri notes how strange this is and recalls him saying before that he doesn't remember falling into the sea. She then wonders if he is hiding something. The man then mentions it is late to be saying thank you for saving him and acknowledges she is a kind person. He then asks if she can bring his clothes as this situation is quite embarrassing. She then says embarrassedly that she is sorry and will bring them right back. As she leaves the room, she notes how she was worried she had not explained things well but is relieved that he seemed to understand her. She recalls that it is spring here, so his clothes must be hot to wear. She needs to ask if he wants another pair. She walks back in the room, telling him his clothes are still wet. We then see an awkward scene unfolding as he tries to escape through the window. She asks what he is doing, to which he stares back at her nervously. He then yells that he wanted to do some photosynthesis, causing her to let out a loud scream that can be heard around the house. We see Yuri sitting in silence. The man sits quietly as well, he has been moved to another room. In her mind, she notes how she saw everything and how it was big. Yuri then starts to speak. She says she doesn't know his situation and is not curious, however, he should rest first in his current state and just focus on getting well for now. She mentions it is spring, so it will be hot wearing his clothes again. She says she will bring him a new pair in a moment. He thanks her and says the porridge she made was very well done and delicious. She smiles back, saying, "Sure." Later, we see her hand him a new pair of clothes. He asks how she could make them so quickly. She tells him to try them on. It is stated that in this game, one simply puts the ingredients of what they want into a machine, and it is created. She notes she will have to explain this to him later so it won't seem suspicious and says she can show him after he recovers. He tells her he has worn underwear too. She questions this before telling him that these are ordinary clothes. He mentions that they are exposing his flesh, to which she says she is wearing the same thing too. He mentions that he understands there are different clothes for women, yet if a man were to walk around wearing something like he has on right now, he would be called shameless. She then notes how this guy is definitely not normal, considering the way he talks and his previous clothes. He might actually be from a royal family. She recalls how her brother would often show her romance fantasy novels, and the characters in them would have similar behaviors to the man in front of her. He then says he is sorry for being disrespectful since she made him something nice, to which she says it is fine and that she can make him a new one if he is uncomfortable. He tells her she does not need to, as this outfit is soft and comfortable, and she has also seen him wearing a lot less, so this isn't really that bad. She yells, "It's not like that," before saying she only saw his chest and only took off his underwear when there was cover. She then tells him to drink this since he has put on clothes. He says he does not want to. She tells him it is nothing strange and that it is the medicine he drank before, to which he says he knows, and that is why he does not need it. She tells him his body is not yet well enough to be caught trying to escape through a window, to which he says he was not escaping and was doing photosynthesis. He then tells her not to mind him and to let him rot away. She notes how he is spewing nonsense with such a serious expression. She also notes how he does not seem like a bad person, considering how he thanks her. She notes how he does not seem to have any intention of lying about his memory loss. The quest then appears as she recalls she must make him see how precious and beautiful life is. She notes how he must not want her to show affection and will continue to keep his guard up around her. It is like what happened after her family treated her following her accident. She notes how she must show kindness without hesitation. Everyone said it was okay, but she regretted it all the way up until her death. She sits sadly before noting how being hurt can be scary. She then says mouth before telling him to open it as the medicine is going in. She then pours the elixir into his mouth. We can see him gulping every last drop. He holds his neck and asks what that was. She apologizes for making him drink it by force but explains that his body needs to be healthy so he won't have any bad thoughts. It's just that she does not want him to pass on. She notes how the system made her save this man, so there must be a reason why someone who says they did not jump into the sea got caught by her fishing net. She tells him he must stay in this room to get better, and he can leave to meet the animals after that. He asks why, saying he is not related to Yuri yet she is helping him so much. She tells him, as she said before, she wants him to live. He continues to question why and asks what she would do if he did something bad to her. He mentions how no one else is on this island and a strange man appeared out of nowhere. She is stunned before saying that if he is talking about that possibility, then she is absolutely fine. She mentions being strong enough to break diamonds and how they are weak compared to her strength, and how she can pluck trees and move them around during fieldwork. He is stunned before she mentions how she tore his clothes apart since they were hard to take off. He questions what she tore as she starts to say she did it with her hands. She tells him she will be fine and that he should not spout nonsense and focus on his recovery. He starts to feel fear before saying that he will work hard. She then lets out a bright smile. She recalls receiving so much love from her family and not being able to repay them. She does not know why she was given this second chance at life and how she cannot remove the sorrow she caused her family. She tells him she will be going now as he must be tired. He lays back on the bed, noting how he doesn't understand why this woman is here. His eyes start to close as he notes how everything is a mess. Yuri lets out a sigh. She thinks about how she was worried about what to do if he kept wanting to pass on but is now glad that he listened. She thinks about how he has not said much, so she doesn't know what kind of person he is, but that he is not as dangerous as she thought. She wonders if she should make him new clothes before then, wondering what he meant when he said, "Do something terrible." She continues to ponder before getting stunned by a realization. She wonders why someone would say such a thing before deciding to just go to bed early. The window opens slightly, and a fairy looks inside what is confirmed to be Yuri's room. Her eyes open from her slumber, and Yuri sits upright on her bed. She looks around for a moment. She starts to walk, noting her body seems to be moving on its own. She wonders where she is going as we see the man asleep. She looks down at him. She then notes how she wants to do something fun. Her eyes then widen. She sits up on her bed, wondering who that was and if it was her. The quest window is open. It states the Dream Fairy was here in the early morning and that she now possesses the clumsy gem of the Dream Fairy. She grabs her head, yelling, "What kind of a dream was that?" The morning arises as we see the man silently staring. He asks Yuri if she is alright, which startles her. He mentions she is sweating and anxious and that he thought she was sick. She tells him it was nothing and she is fine. She blushes, thinking how this is all due to the Dream Fairy. She recalls how fairies can be seen throughout the island and that the Dream Fairy goes about showing dreams wherever it has been. A gem is created based on the dream experienced. A happy dream yields a happy gem, a scary dream an unhappy gem, a precognitive dream the future gem, and a nonsensical dream a clumsy gem. Putting this gem by one's pillow results in a dream with the same power. It can be useful, but of all the days for the fairy to visit, it had to be yesterday. The man says, "Excuse me," calling to Yuri again. She is startled again, then says since he is feeling better, they should go on a picnic. She mentions that being alone together inside all the time makes her feel conscious and it might be better to go outside. She says there is a place with pretty flowers and they should see them. An outside trip on a sunny day will make him feel better, and his body might recover faster. He thanks her for her kindness but says he is alright and it doesn't matter to him if he gets better or not. She then angrily says the answer is already decided and it would be better if he just said yes, to which he nervously agrees. She thinks about how she initially planned to persuade him but ended up scaring him. Was she too forceful? She then asks if he would like to eat anything, and since they are having a picnic, she will make a lunchbox. She asks him to tell her anything he likes, and she will make it. He lets out a smile before saying he wants to eat an octopus. She questions that decision before noting how it's not difficult, but one can only catch them in the summer, so she cannot get it right now. He then says she does not need to push herself, as he knows it would be tough cooking with all those tentacles, they are like devil's minions. She recalls how that phrase sounds familiar as she stares at the guidebook. She then stares at the entry about octopus, which notes when she first caught one and uses the same phrase as the man did in its description. She thinks about how the area where this man lives calls them the devil's fish, and yet he insisted on having some. He continues to say he really wants to eat it and how it would be a shame for Yuri to go on a picnic on her own. She notes how he is definitely trying to find a way out of having to go. She then thinks about how it gets on her nerves how he pretends not to remember anything, so she decides to tease him a bit. She tells him she can make it, which leaves him stunned. She mentions how for tomorrow's lunchbox, she will make all octopus dishes, boiled, grilled, and steamed. They can even have it for dinner tonight. The man immediately says, it's fine. He mentions how up until today, it's probably best to eat what she has been making for him, that thing that was soft and easy to digest. She tells him no way and that she should hurry up and make what he really wants to eat. She says she will stop by the farm and catch an octopus right now, noting that patients recover faster when they eat and sleep well. This leaves the man stunned silent. He then yells for Yuri to wait a moment. We later see two angry chickens. Yuri tells them she is sorry and how they must be hungry. She mentions she has been preoccupied taking care of someone else and lost track of time. She notes how despite not doing anything special, spending time with someone really was quite enjoyable. She notes how nervous she was at first since he is handsome and had a cold expression, but he is quite humorous the more she gets to know him. She thinks about how she will make sandwiches and cake for Lara, commenting that the cheesecake recipe is really good. She then notices something strange. Here he goes again, trying to escape. She stares at him angrily as he is now alarmed. He then nervously says he was just photosynthesizing. She wonders if her prank earlier was too mean. We later see him silently seated in bed. She tells him to please eat as he notes how it has finally come. He is then left stunned. She asks him what is wrong and if he doesn't like porridge. He mentions how he thought she was bringing octopus, to which she says it was a lie. She mentions how she thought he was messing with her, so she decided to play a prank, not realizing he hated octopus that much. It might have gone too far, so she apologizes. He is stunned for a moment. He then says there is no need to apologize, as it was his fault he lied first. She says despite that, she knew he hated it and kept insisting on the joke as well. He asks if it really was that obvious. She then says she is making sandwiches and rice balls for tomorrow and strawberry juice and cheesecake will be snacks. He seems to be content with that, which makes Yuri overjoyed, saying she will get it ready right now. He then asks if he looks ridiculous to her. He has no attachment to life yet he is panicking over octopus. She tells him that just because he has no regrets about life does not mean he must have unpleasant experiences. She tells him that wanting to pass on and unpleasant experiences aren't really on the same level. As he stares, he notes how kind-hearted Yuri is. He mentions how she is looking after such a suspicious person like him and even comforts him when he is embarrassed. He says, "Thank you truthfully." She then thinks about how much his mood has lightened up and wonders if she should ask. She then questions if he hasn't remembered anything. He tells her yes, not yet. She notes how his guard is not completely down as she says she understands. She notes there is nothing else she can do but give him some time. She tells him to feel free to talk about anything he wants whenever and to eat the porridge before it gets cold. She stares as he proceeds to do so. She then notes how, thinking about it, this dude has not bathed once since she grabbed him from the sea. He smells fine and looks okay, but he must feel incredibly gross right now. She then asks if he would like her to help him bathe after he is done eating. He spits out some porridge as she questions if he is super embarrassed. He says yes and asks if there is a smell. She says no and mentions she just thought he'd been lying there for several days and she was worried he might be uncomfortable. He mentions how despite not being someone who needs it, if Yuri strongly insists. She then says it will take a little time to clean up, so for now, he should lie down and rest. After she is ready, she will call him in. He says okay. It is later nighttime as he looks up at the ceiling nervously. He thinks about bathing, and with Yuri herself. He starts to blush bright red. We see Yuri getting ready, noting how he mostly should be able to manage to wash himself. She then appears, saying that the bath preparations are done. He tells her he is ready too, as he has boxers on. She wonders if he was uncomfortable to have done this already. She then says it might be hard to move, so she can carry him over. He agrees. He then immediately says no, wait and mentions how he can move just fine on his own. He then stumbles all the way onto the floor. He says he is sorry as he is now in her arms. She tells him it's nothing much. She tells him he should not feel sorry or embarrassed and that this is only because he is hurt. He says yes to that. He then tells her he is now in her care. She questions what for. He says to help him with his bath, which causes her to blush. She then lets out a cry, asking when did she say she would help. She meant to say she would take him to the bathroom, not bathe him. He is blushing and silent. He tells her he is so sorry and that he did not mean anything weird and how he just misunderstood. She tells him it's okay and she may have said it confusingly. He then says he will wash by himself, to which she says okay and that she will be going now. We later see him on the floor, taking a deep breath. He notes how he messed up and how at the palace, someone assisting you is normal. He then wonders how he will face her tomorrow. The next day, Yuri is wearing overalls and mentions how nice the weather is. She mentions how good it is they came outside, to which he dejectedly says, it's really nice. She asks if he is still bothered by what happened yesterday. She mentions how misunderstandings happen and to not worry about it. He says it's that, but also her outfit. He mentions how the silhouette is quite revealing and that it's torn in places, so he does not know where to look. She notes how she picked this because it was long. She tells him to please wait then, as she will go change, to which he tells her she does not need to go that far. She says it's no trouble and that it is a special day, so they need to make one another comfortable. He is speechless. She then announces she is back. He is silent as she asks if the view is pretty and how she put a lot of effort into this place. He asks if Yuri arranged this all herself, to which she says she created it to release the fairy fireflies that were living on the island. She mentions how different flowers bloom each season, so if one comes at different times, it will still be beautiful. He then mentions how it is more beautiful than the noble lady's garden or the palace's glass house. Yuri notices this tidbit of information and thinks about how he must be from a really high status. She wonders who this guy could really be as she stares. The man says to wait and that he will go by himself. She mentions how quick he is to catch on as he asks if she has always been this bold. He mentions how she has no hesitation when touching and hugging a man she is not related with. She yells no and says that it is just uncomfortable to see a hurt person push himself too much. She then asks if he is hungry as she brought lunch. The food can be seen lined up over a red picnic blanket. She tells him she made the rice balls with various ingredients, the sandwiches, and a berry drink with cheesecake. He takes a bite into the rice ball and then mentions how delicious it is. He mentions how the savory filling goes well with the rich flavor, and the rice is good. He then speaks about how rice from Daphne is strange and inedible. She notices this information as she wonders where she heard that place name before. She tells him she harvested this year's crops herself, so there should be no smell, and that the porridge was made from the same rice. He asks if that is really true. He calls this incredible and says that her dishes make him feel better than medicine. She asks what he means by that, to which he asks if she doesn't know. He mentions how all the dishes she made are imbued with some strange powers. He mentions how he can see it. He mentions how it is not magical or divine and asks if she made that cart by herself. He mentions how the path, the furniture at the house, and everything she touched is emitting a mysterious glow, kind of like a heat haze, and all feels warm. She is blushing as he notes how pretty her smile is. She tells him this is normal, as it is spring and the sun is bright, so he can see a haze. The man then tells Yuri he is sorry for lying before about not remembering anything. She notes how she knew he would tell her someday but not this soon. She tells him it is okay and how everyone has a past they don't want to talk about. He asks if she has one too. She notes how she wished she could erase lashing out at her parents after the accident, but it is not something to bring up to someone who doesn't know the situation. She mentions having an accident that disabled her legs and relying on her family's help before then asking what his name is. He apologizes, saying he should have told her sooner. He starts to say his name as she wonders if he is a marquis, a duke, or even a crown prince. Maybe he is a protagonist from a story she read. He then says racial. To her shock, a scene occurs where a man asks if someone was trying to run away again, described as brutal, mistrustful of humans, crazy, and love-deprived. He tells the person it is useless to try and run away. He is identified as a classic regrettable male lead who locks the heroine in for half the novel and clings to her. He is named as the protagonist from the novel I Became the Savior of the Cursed Tyrant Emperor Racial. Yuri, seated outdoors with a silver-haired young man amidst lush greenery, pondered if this person could possibly be Emperor Radkiel. She quickly dismissed the thought as a misunderstanding, remembering the man she knew was the one struggling after getting caught in the window while trying to escape because he didn't want to eat octopus. The Radkiel in the novel, she recalled, was a terrifying tyrant who killed anyone he disliked and even started wars, depicted sitting on a throne amidst blood splatters and fallen banners. The silver-haired young man, noticing her preoccupation, stated that since it seemed something bothered her, he would speak first. He revealed his true identity. He was actually the prince of the Sikrian Empire, who lost everything overnight due to a rebellion and fled. He confessed he was betrayed by subordinates he trusted more than family and now had a bounty on his head. He then admitted he thought the reason Miss Yuri saved him was for that purpose, to claim the bounty. Yuri responded with a quiet realization, thinking internally that was why he kept saying he wanted to die all this time. She admitted she really hadn't known who he was, but he continued, stating she must have realized by now that he was in a pathetic situation, abandoned by close friends, his life even threatened. As he spoke, a tear escaped his eye, prompting Yuri to react with surprise. She found herself wondering why a man crying looked so pretty, before quickly scolding herself that such thoughts were inappropriate. Seeing him cover his face, she urged him not to cry, offering a handkerchief. Yuri then explained what had surprised her wasn't finding out who he was, but because his name was the same as a character in her favorite novel, a protagonist who was a really bad tyrant. She admitted that even though it was just a novel, she had worried it might bother him unnecessarily if he heard it. The silver-haired young man, now drying his eyes, remarked that Radkiel was a very common name, so he didn't think Miss Yuri needed to worry about it, to which she nervously agreed, asking if he was right. Internally, however, Yuri acknowledged that the male lead's appearance in the novel was exactly like Radkiel, and the country Sikrian also appeared in the novel. She tried to convince herself not to worry about it, hoping it was just a series of coincidental overlaps. Suddenly, a bright notification appeared: a new quest has appeared. It was a sudden quest titled Amaya Blockhead, linked to the main quest A Stranger Who Wants to Die, and therefore could not be refused. The quest details read: Radkiel wants to hide his identity. Let's desperately pretend not to know for his sake. The success condition was to become a blockhead until the favorability is 100 or more, while failure meant saying something that reveals you have any hints while the favorability is 100 or less. The consequences were stark. Upon quest success, the A Stranger Who Wants to Die quest would be successful. Upon quest failure, it would change to ambiguous but clear obsession. Yuri questioned if this was a linked quest. She then had a flashback, seemingly from a previous life, remembering reading a book, thinking that she had definitely seen this somewhere before, wondering if it was a side story of saving the tyrant. Another memory showed her in a hospital bed, a young man reading to her, asking if she hadn't seen this book before and what it was, while she expressed eager desire to see it. The young man, noticing a particular book, had asked why this was here, then stated firmly that there was no way she could see it yet. Yuri, presumably her past self, questioned why not yet. The young man explained, because this is rated R, revealing the book's title, I became the savior of the depraved tyrant, with a subtitle, side story ambiguous but clear obsession dash. Young Yuri had stared silently. The memory solidified her realization: as expected, he was the same person as Radkiel in the novel. The man she happened to save was the obsessive male lead of a tragic romance novel. Back in the present, sitting on a picnic blanket with Radkiel, Yuri internally screamed, clutching her head, thinking her sister and brother would say she was screwed. Back in the present, Radkiel, noticing her distress, asked if Yuri was alright and if there was something she wanted to say. Yuri, flustered, quickly tried to dismiss his concern, offering him dessert cake, but internally acknowledged that something was definitely strange. Even if the Radkiel here and the Radkiel in the novel were the same person, the two still had very different images, depicted as a split image, one a dark, brooding figure, the other the gentle, sunlit man beside her. Another troubling thought was the favorability system. On this island, she recalled, favorability was usually only seen when interacting with animals, like chickens in a coop. It increased with good care and decreased with neglect. Thinking along the same lines, she reasoned it probably meant that if she treated Radkiel well, his favorability would go up. Offering him more to drink, she called him Radkiel? As she did, his favorability hearts visibly increased, a blush appearing on his face. He apologized, explaining it had been a while since he heard his name, so he got a little excited. Yuri internally exclaimed that his favorability went up. She mused that this favorability wasn't much different from what appeared for animals. Radkiel then addressed her, Yuri, and pointed above her head, asking what this was. Yuri, startled, looked up to see pixelated hearts floating above her own head, exclaiming in shock if he could see that. Flustered, Yuri stammered, trying to explain that it was he could think of it as intimacy, a sign that she felt internal intimacy towards him. Radkiel's expression remained thoughtful as pixelated hearts continued to appear. Yuri quickly added that the fact he saw it meant they could become good friends, internally reassuring herself that the system only told her to raise the favorability to 100 or more. It didn't tell her to fall in love, affirming to herself that her efforts were only as a friend, not a boyfriend, but like a platonic friend. Radkiel replied with a quiet acknowledgement, then added that it made him happy to be able to have a close relationship with Yuri. More pixelated hearts erupted around him, causing Yuri to internally groan in frustration, wondering aloud if this wasn't going up way too easily. Her internal monologue spiraled into panic. What if his favorability went up too much and he started liking her instead of the novel's heroine? She recalled that even in the novel, Radkiel had a tendency to fall in love easily due to his unfortunate family environment, and if that happened, she worried if she would experience the same situation as the heroine in the novel, depicted as being held closely, almost possessively, by Radkiel. Snapping out of it with a resolute sound of denial, Yuri vehemently shook her head, internally declaring she didn't want to become the protagonist of a rated R tragic obsession story. Radkiel, noticing her sudden agitation, questioned her reaction. Just then, Radkiel observed that a black heart had appeared above Yuri's head, questioning what it meant and why this was happening. He reasoned that if a red heart meant intimacy, then a black heart must mean the opposite, leading him to ask forlornly if Yuri disliked him. Yuri, startled and waving her hands dismissively, quickly denied it, saying it wasn't that. Internally, she acknowledged it felt a bit harsh to tell someone who just recovered from being sick that their favorability had dropped. Trying to salvage the situation, she explained that black hearts were merely a sign of feeling gloomy, so it didn't mean Radkiel's favorability had dropped. Radkiel remained silent, contemplating her explanation. Pondering further, Yuri realized that calling him Radkiel kept reminding her of the novel's protagonist, which was uncomfortable, and wondered if there was something else she could call him. Addressing him politely, she asked if it would be alright to call him Rael. Radkiel, surprised, questioned if that was like a nickname. Yuri confirmed it was, asking if it would be alright. Radkiel, blushing slightly, replied that if that was the case, could he just call her Yuri too? Yuri brightened, exclaiming that she liked that better. As she stretched, Yuri noted the strengthening sunlight and suggested they move somewhere else, offering her hand and proposing to show him around other places too. Radkiel took her outstretched hand, their fingers interlacing as she helped him up, and he replied softly, "Yes, Yuri." A chibi illustration depicted them holding hands, more pixelated hearts appearing, prompting Yuri's internal thought that as expected, she needed to be careful not to let his favorability go up too much. The narrative then shifted to a grand, imposing image of Radkiel seated on a throne, dressed in regal attire, looking every bit the tyrant savior from the romance fantasy novel Savior of the Cursed Tyrant, confirming that in the abbreviated title, Radkiel was the first prince of the Sikrian Empire. The narrative provided backstory from the novel's Savior of the Cursed Tyrant. Rael's mother, a commoner, became the fourth empress due to the emperor's favor, but other jealous royal family members persistently harassed Radkiel and his mother, their hostility represented by shadowy, reaching hands. Then one day, the healthy emperor suddenly fell ill, and Radkiel's mother was subsequently poisoned, disguised as suicide, as if her enemies had been waiting for the opportunity. She died by the poison tea sent by the empress, no less, shown lying in a pool of blood. Young Radkiel cradled his dying mother, her last words urging him not to find happiness through blood and hatred, not to resent anyone, but to just live happily. Young Radkiel cried out her name, then a desperate mother, kneeling beside her lifeless body in the desolate palace. However, left alone, Radkiel was subjected to even worse abuse, and eventually, forgetting his mother's last words, he resolved to take revenge. Pretending to have lost his mind from grief, he secretly killed the princes one by one behind the scenes. After finally killing the crown prince, depicted with a sword piercing him, gasping Radkiel's name, Radkiel declared everyone involved would meet a miserable death, then received an unavoidable curse from the crown prince, who was a magician. Radkiel, with a chilling smile, killed all his siblings and became emperor, but he kept having dreams of losing his loved ones, showing him lying bloodied beside a similarly wounded woman, gradually going mad and even ending up hurting the precious heroine. Returning to the present picnic scene, Yuri mused that the Radkiel in the novel and the current Rael seemed so different, wondering if perhaps the current Rael hadn't done anything yet, recalling the common romance fantasy cliché where characters return to before the original story starts. In the novel, Radkiel ascended the throne in his mid-20s, so Yuri decided she should ask how old Rael was now, then asked him, "Rael, by any chance, how old are you?" Rael, however, suddenly groaned in pain, his face contorted, startling Yuri. She exclaimed internally, wondering since when he had been like this and if walking was still too much for him. She rushed to help, thinking first of a blanket, then immediately correcting herself, thinking of medicine first. As Rael writhed in pain, Yuri, forgetting her own panic about the quests, resolved to save him first. Suddenly, a system notification popped up. Affection event, would you like to proceed with fever? Confused, Yuri questioned what an affection event was, noting nothing like this had popped up before and wondering if maybe because the affection feature was added, even illnesses triggered events now. Realizing this wasn't the time to ponder, she quickly accepted the mission, depicted as her chibi self helping the ailing Rael, deciding to check the mission details later at home, her immediate priority being to give him the elixir. She rushed him indoors, slamming the door behind them, declaring, "Rael, wait a moment. I'll bring the elixir right away." She dashed up the stairs, murmuring to go quickly. Returning with several bottles, she announced, "Rail, I brought the elixir dash," only to be met with another system notification: "Elixir use prohibited. Elixir use is prohibited during the affection event. You lost a heart for being too far from Radkiel. Remaining hearts: if hearts reach 0, Radkiel will die." Yuri stared in disbelief, exclaiming, "What?" Panicked, she questioned why elixir use was prohibited and, more importantly, what was with the hearts. Rail, still in distress, murmured her name, Yuri. She rushed to his side, asking if he was okay. He gasped that his body felt so suffocated. Suddenly, he pulled her into a tight embrace, confusing Yuri as he apologized, explaining that somehow, when he was close to Yuri, it felt like he was getting better. Yuri internally questioned if it really felt like he was getting better. Checking the status window, she saw a single red heart displayed. Then as they remained embraced, the hearts increased to 2, then 3, prompting her internal exclamation that the hearts had increased compared to before. She wondered if it could be that hearts only increased when staying close to Radkiel. Rail shivered, murmuring he was cold. Yuri, now embracing him closely, her face pressed against his bare back, thought with determination, "For now, let's stay like this until Rail gets better." Rail murmured her name again, Yuri, a soft, contented sound escaping him as they held each other amidst a backdrop of blooming roses. As Yuri held Rail close, determined to help him recover, a new system notification chimed: "Hearts have filled up to the limit. To increase hearts further, deeper contact is required." Yuri, depicted as a confused chibi, questioned what deeper contact meant. The status window showed only 2 remaining hearts, blinking precariously. Taking a decisive breath, Yuri leaned in and gently kissed Rail's cheek. His eyes snapped open in surprise. Looking at the status window again, Yuri exclaimed happily that the hearts had increased, seeing 3 red hearts now displayed. She thought with relief, "Good, if we keep going like this slowly." Suddenly, Rail murmured her name, then more urgently, Yuri." He abruptly pulled her down onto the bed, their positions reversing as he hovered over her, causing Yuri to gasp in shock and question what was happening. He leaned in, nuzzling her shoulder, causing her to cry out his name in surprise, "Rail?" He then moved to kiss her neck, his lips brushing her skin, prompting her flustered exclamation that this wasn't her intention. As he continued, her clothes seemed to almost melt away, leaving her in her undergarments. Yuri, blushing furiously and utterly bewildered, stammered, wondering what she should do. Rail, his face flushed and eyes hazy, asked softly if she hated it. Yuri, completely flustered but perhaps feeling a pull, murmured that she would take off her clothes. Rail responded simply, "Okay, then," as he began to unfasten his own trousers. Lying beside him, Yuri let out a series of soft moans as Rail, now also undressed, loomed over her. She internally marveled, wondering why it was so big, noting it was big even when she saw it in the dream, but in real life, it was even more amazing. A strange thought crossed her mind: somehow she felt like touching it just once. Rail, seemingly sensing her unspoken desire, asked softly if she would like to touch it once. Yuri, mortified, exclaimed if she had said that out loud. Rail, looking down at her with a slight smirk, replied that she was staring at it so much. Yuri, her eyes wide and her cheeks burning, hesitated for a moment, before giving in to the strange impulse, deciding then just once. A notification appeared on the screen, glowing faintly: "Rodriel has fainted due to overexertion. Remaining hearts, a lot." A woman's hand reached out to touch his bare shoulder with a worried tenderness. Meanwhile, a chibi version of a shocked dark-haired girl appeared beside the alert, her expression frozen in disbelief as she silently exclaimed through wide, animated eyes that he had really fainted in that moment of chaos. Later, the same girl, Yuri, sat hunched over with a groan, a soft ugh escaping her lips as her cheeks turned a vibrant red. Her thoughts raced as she muttered to herself that they might have gotten caught up in the moment, but even so, she couldn't fathom how she would ever face him again after what happened. Her mind wandered to Rodriel's demeanor. He had seemed surprisingly experienced, calm even, and she couldn't help but suspect he might be in his late 20s. That thought led her into a spiral of panic as a terrifying possibility crossed her mind: what if Rodriel had already become a tyrant? What if he turned obsessive and locked her away like some deranged captor, just like in the worst stories? The mere idea made her inner voice scream in horror, building into a frenzied mental shriek before being abruptly interrupted. Rodriel, now fully awake and properly dressed, softly called her name. Yuri gasped at the sound of it and quickly turned around, her heart pounding. she managed to say with a forced smile that Rail was up, trying to keep her tone casual. He replied with a simple yeah. Before shifting awkwardly. About yesterday. Rodriel began carefully, but Yuri's panic resurfaced like a crashing wave. Her mind screamed once again in startled alarm, though she managed to compose herself enough to blurt out that it was time for her to feed the animals and that she had to do it every morning without fail, so she had to go. Without giving him a chance to reply, she turned on her heel and tried to escape, her movements hasty. Rodriel, blinking in confusion, asked what was going on, but Yuri's dash was suddenly halted by a loud beeping sound and a flash of pale light that froze her in place. She blinked and asked aloud what that was, just as another notification appeared in midair: you'll lose hearts if you're separated from the target during the affection level quest. Yuri groaned inwardly, now remembering the importance of the heart system. She muttered to herself that the hearts were at stake. Realizing that she had no choice but to stay close to him, she sighed in defeat, wondering aloud what she should do in this ridiculous situation. After a moment's thought, she turned toward Rodriel and asked him if he could give her a second because she needed to make something. He blinked in surprise and nodded, saying okay, though his curiosity was evident. Moments later, with a few clattering sounds and some puzzled remarks from Rodriel drifting through the doorway, Yuri reappeared with a rather well-made, comfortable-looking chair with large wheels. She smiled brightly and apologized for the wait before gesturing to the chair, asking him to please take a seat. Rodriel looked at the contraption and observed aloud that it had big wheels attached. Yuri nodded enthusiastically and explained that it was called a wheelchair, and she had made it just for him so that moving around would be easier in his current condition. Then, with a gentle tone, she suggested that they go outside and talk while enjoying some fresh air. With Rodriel now seated in the wheelchair, the two made their way to a rustic chicken coop, where the air was filled with clucking and the rhythmic flapping of wings. Yuri greeted the birds cheerfully and scattered feet across the ground, calling out that it was feeding time. Rodriel, observing the flock with mild curiosity, remarked that there were quite a lot of chickens. He asked how many she had. Yuri beamed proudly and listed them from left to right: Ouija, Allah, Inga, Nana, Dadami, another Allah, Mama, Baba, and Sasa, though she fumbled the count slightly. Rodriel commented with a small smile that the names were cute and simple. Yuri then asked if he liked chickens, speculating that maybe he had never seen one up close, given that he was a prince. Rodriel's expression darkened slightly as he shared that he had, in fact, seen chickens before. His brothers had once locked him in a chicken coop as a punishment. He explained that they wouldn't let him out until he had licked all the eggs, and he shivered at the memory of being pecked by several hundred chickens at once, calling the experience terrible. Yuri looked horrified as she exclaimed in disbelief that such a thing had really happened. She immediately offered to turn him away from the coop if he was feeling uncomfortable, but Rodriel, though clearly shaken, stammered that he was fine and didn't want to make a fuss. Then, his voice took on a hesitant note as he began to speak again. He told her that he wasn't sure if it had all been a fever-induced hallucination, but that he wasn't crazy. He said he hadn't intended to do anything bad to her. Yuri, still startled by his serious tone, asked him what he meant. Rodriel continued, explaining that he had seen a message telling him that if he left her, he would start losing hearts and eventually die. He confessed that after that, the world began to grow dark, and he instinctively leaned on her for survival. Then, as if the memory overwhelmed him, he covered his blushing face with trembling hands and admitted that when she started kissing him, he completely lost control. He apologized profusely, saying someone as terrible as him didn't deserve to live after such disgrace. Yuri quickly reassured him with a flustered voice that it was fine really. She then awkwardly explained that everything he had seen was indeed real. He had truly lost hearts when he moved away from her, and a single heart now remained, flashing with danger. She told him honestly that if they had been apart any longer at that moment, he actually could have died. Her cheeks reddened even more as she mumbled shyly that she didn't mind what had happened. In fact, she had really liked it. Rodriel, stunned by her words, asked in disbelief if she really meant that. Yuri panicked, raising both hands and blurting out that they absolutely couldn't do it again. Yesterday had been an emergency, and she emphasized that she didn't have feelings for him, so it should never happen again. Rodriel looked completely dazed, a faint blue energy crackling softly around him. Yuri watched him closely and thought with a furrowed brow that if his affection level kept rising like this, things could become very dangerous. Especially with obsessive types like him. She reminded herself firmly that weak and frail men weren't her type anyway. Her expression softened a little as she made a vow to herself she couldn't undo what had happened, but she would make sure things never got intimate between them again. The scene shifted dramatically to a grand glass-domed conservatory drenched in the golden light of a setting sun. Inside, a voice called out softly, almost tenderly, before saying more clearly, Yuri. She lay asleep in a lavish bed adorned with rose petals, stirring slightly and murmuring in her sleep, stretching languidly. As she woke fully, her eyes fluttered open in confusion and she looked around the unfamiliar, opulent room, asking herself where she was. That's when she realized her hands were chained above her head. The soft clatter of the chains echoed through the room as her confusion turned into alarm. She cried out in shock, demanding to know what was going on. Rodriel stepped into view, composed and unreadable. He stated simply that she was awake. Yuri was startled to see him and managed to stammer his name, asking what this was all about, where they were, and if he had done this to her. Rodriel, with a graceful swish of his cloak, leaned closer and spoke in a calm yet chilling voice. He reminded her that he had told her to wait for him, but instead, she had tried to run away again. That, he explained coldly, was why today he would show everyone who she truly belonged to. He sat on the edge of the bed, his presence overwhelming the ornate chamber as Yuri panicked internally, worried that someone might walk in at any moment. She struggled against the restraints, her heart pounding as he leaned in with intensity. His voice was filled with obsession, murmuring words too dangerous to repeat, represented only by unspoken vulgar dialogue, obsessive remarks, and a possessive vow to make her beg for love. Yuri could only stare at him, speechless and wide-eyed, before a tiny, breathless "oh" escaped her lips. Suddenly, the room trembled with a low rumble as purple light flashed around them. Yuri recognized the phenomenon instantly, her eyes narrowing with understanding. She knew what this was. The dream dissolved in an instant. She awoke abruptly in her own bed, the covers swishing as she sat up with a gasp. A new notification appeared. A dream fairy came by during the night. You received a dream fairy's ransom. Yuri groaned and crushed the magical message in her palm, her voice a low growl of frustration. She muttered that she had had enough of this nonsense. Rain lashed against the window of her modest cottage as she fumed internally, promising to give that mischievous fairy a piece of her mind. These dreams were becoming far too vivid, far too real, and far too embarrassing. Still flustered from both the dream and her previous confession to Rodriel, Yuri blushed deeply and thought to herself that yes, it had felt good, but that wasn't the point at all. She reminded herself sternly that she had vowed not to get physically involved with him again. Her eyes drifted toward Rodriel, who was fast asleep, and she sighed in relief. She thought that thank goodness it had been just a random jewel. If it had been a prophetic jewel, she might have actually considered tossing Rodriel into the ocean out of sheer panic. Then something caught her eye. Pixelated hearts began floating gently around the sleeping Rodriel. Yuri blinked, asking aloud in a hushed tone what was happening. She leaned closer and spotted a tiny, sparkling yellow jewel hovering just above his head. She murmured in realization that it looked like a prophetic jewel. But prophetic jewels were only supposed to appear when someone had a dream about a future event that was going to come true. Her heart skipped a beat as she whispered to herself that maybe, just maybe, Rodriel had dreamt something good that was about to happen. Rodriel stirred in his sleep, murmuring softly that they couldn't do that here with a faint, dreamy tone. Yuri, completely bewildered and frozen in place, muttered his name while wondering aloud what on earth he was dreaming about as she leaned in closer. Rodriel continued to speak in his sleep, mumbling that in his dream, he was holding hands with Yuri. As she observed the dream bubbles that depicted them as children holding hands, Yuri mentally noted that holding hands was innocent enough, so that was okay. Then Rodriel murmured again, saying they were hugging, with the dream bubble showing what could only be described as an encouraging hug. Yuri, still trying to be reasonable, conceded in her thoughts that hugs were also fine. But then, without warning, Rodriel's dream shifted into a darker tone. He began to murmur fragmented words like kissing, kidnap, confinement, and marriage. A series of beeping sounds accompanied increasingly pixelated and ominous dream bubbles, each one worse than the last, and Yuri felt completely aghast as her mind screamed in disbelief, wondering why on earth he would jump straight from kissing to kidnapping, demanding internally to know what had happened in between those events, and silently begging him to wake up before this got worse. Rodriel, however, simply smiled in his sleep with an innocent and contented hum, as if nothing were wrong. Yuri, slumping in emotional defeat, muttered that she couldn't believe what she was hearing. The hazy images from her dream, the one where she had been chained with Rodriel looming ominously over her, flashed in her mind once again. Her thoughts spiraled as she wondered aloud whether he could somehow be dreaming the exact same thing she did and questioned, with rising dread, whether kidnapping and confinement really were going to be her future, imagining shackles with no key. Still asleep, Rodriel murmured for her to stop, sounding sweetly distressed, which pushed Yuri over the edge. Thoroughly agitated now, she grabbed his shoulders and shook him, shouting at him with frustration, telling him he was the one who needed to stop. At that moment, a loud, clear ding echoed in the air, followed by a bright flash of light and a new notification that appeared in front of her. The message declared that Rodriel now had enough hearts to last 312 hours without needing to increase his affection level, and that the affection level mission titled High Fever had officially ended. A wave of relief washed over Yuri as she exclaimed with sincere gratitude that the mission had finally ended. But then another notification appeared, stating that the mission had been a huge success and listing the rewards she had acquired: feature eraser, sleeping potion, and hinged invitation. Confused, Yuri muttered aloud as the items materialized and tumbled softly onto her lap: a strange eraser, a pink potion bottle, and a sealed envelope. She picked them up carefully, holding them in both hands as she wondered aloud what exactly these strange rewards were meant to be. Still flustered and with a slight blush coloring her cheeks, Yuri glanced over at Rodriel, who was now finally stirring in his sleep. She watched him closely, then softly asked if he had slept well. Rodriel slowly opened his eyes and rose slightly in bed. He replied that he had, but paused with a furrowed brow and a puzzled expression as he turned to her and asked what had happened. Yuri, who now looked visibly drained with dark circles under her eyes, quickly put on a sweet and innocent front, assuring him that nothing had happened and asking why he was asking that at all. Rodriel, however, was not convinced. He told her that he had heard her laughing the night before and concluded she must have had a very good dream. Yuri's eyes widened in alarm as she clamped a hand over her mouth and a deep blush crept up her neck. Inwardly panicking, she tried to form a coherent thought, realizing with horror that his reaction said everything. It meant he had likely had the same dream as her. Those vivid and disturbing images of her chained and Rodriel looming over her returned unbidden to her mind, sending a fresh wave of embarrassment through her. Trying to regain her composure, Yuri changed the subject with awkward urgency and asked how he was feeling now. Rodriel touched his forehead, noting that he felt much better, but his head still felt a bit hot. Yuri frowned, realizing he must not be fully recovered yet, and reminded herself that although the quest had ended, she hadn't received any messages confirming his complete recovery. Rodriel blinked at her in confusion, asking what quest she was talking about. Yuri hesitated, struggling to explain something so bizarre, then decided it would be easier to discuss it over breakfast instead of diving into it now. Later, at the breakfast table, an awkward silence lingered between them. Yuri began hesitantly, admitting she wasn't sure where to even begin. Rodriel nodded with quiet understanding, telling her that he was quite sharp, so she should just explain whatever she could. Taking a deep breath, Yuri began to explain that he had been sick because of something called a mission. Rodriel, surprised, repeated the word mission back to her, questioning its meaning. Yuri nodded, explaining that the island often gave her missions from time to time and that the recent one had been directly related to his affection level. Rodriel's expression darkened slightly, his eyes narrowing as he asked if she meant the hearts. Yuri flinched, then admitted the truth. She explained that black hearts meant his affection level had dropped and apologized for having lied about it before, lowering her gaze as she braced herself for his anger. But Rodriel just looked at her for a long moment before speaking gently. He told her that he also had something to confess. Startled, Yuri looked up. Rodriel met her eyes and said with quiet seriousness that he could see her thoughts. Yuri's mouth opened in a silent gasp, her eyes wide with alarm as her heart gave a sudden, terrifying thump. She asked in a horrified whisper whether he truly meant he could see what she was thinking and demanded to know why and how that was even possible. Rodriel leaned back slightly, beads of sweat forming on his brow as he looked away, explaining that he didn't know why either, but her thoughts appeared in a transparent box in front of his eyes. That's a game window, Yuri realized, her thoughts spinning in every direction. A fresh wave of panic surged through her as she questioned when he had started seeing those boxes and what exactly he had seen. Rodriel admitted softly that he had been seeing them from the very beginning. Yuri reeled. She clarified in disbelief whether he meant the moment he first opened his eyes on the island. Her heart dropped like a stone as she snapped internally, realizing that he had been reading her inner monologue from the very first moment. He explained that he hadn't said anything until now because he thought he might be under his spell. Yuri's eyes burned with a deep flush of embarrassment as she accused him of enjoying himself reading her thoughts all this time. Her hands trembled as all her most humiliating and frustrated internal monologues flashed through her mind. Rodriel quickly waved his hands in protest, stammering that it wasn't fun at all and adding, with a pink tint on his cheeks, that it didn't even happen constantly, it only happened when he looked directly into her eyes. The realization struck her like lightning. That meant he could read her thoughts right now. She shrieked in horror and covered her face with both hands, yelling at him to close his eyes immediately. She lunged at him in panic, causing him to tumble backward slightly as he protested, telling her to hold on. Yuri eventually pulled herself back, letting out a long, exasperated sigh. She muttered that she couldn't believe he had hidden something so important from her and asked why he had decided to confess it now. Rodriel, now calm and wearing a blindfold Yuri had either conjured or found nearby, replied earnestly that it was because she had always been honest with him. He continued with a soft, sincere voice, explaining that he knew she had lied about not knowing his identity or the meaning behind the black hearts because she wanted to be considerate of his feelings. He told her he appreciated that deeply and that he didn't want to hide anything from her anymore. He took a deep breath before delivering his final truth. He revealed his full name, Radkiel Felix Sikrian, the sixth prince of the Sikrian Empire. He explained that he had lost consciousness after being betrayed and poisoned by his own subordinates, and when he woke up, he had found himself on the island. As if it were merely a detail, he added that he had turned 20 a month ago and assured her that this was the complete truth. Yuri stared at him in shock, barely able to process what she was hearing. His internal thoughts echoed hers, reminding her that she had been desperate to know his age and had been confused because he looked older than he actually was. And now, she realized with a blush, he had known all along. Stammering, Yuri flailed her hands, struggling to explain herself. She said it was just that his age was an important matter to her. Rodriel's inner thought pierced through her once more, asking whether it was because he eventually became the Devil Emperor. Yuri whispered a soft yes, her voice almost too quiet to hear. A sudden flash of light surrounded her, and a new notification appeared before her eyes, stating that she had revealed Radkiel's identity before his affection level had reached 100. She gasped, stunned as her heart raced in her chest.